is only particular to milk-borne. It can also be towards the meat-borne also. Okay. Some of the organisms can also be caused by through meat-borne also. Okay. So I think ma'am has already taught you about foodborne infection, intoxication, and toxico-infection. So this is just another revision of your class. So when we talk about foodborne infection, please try to understand the concept. Okay, you don't need to write the definition as it is. So foodborne infection means you are eating the food and some pathogenic microorganisms is present inside the food. When you consume those food along with the pathogenic microorganism, then they will cause after you eat they will cause certain symptoms like diarrhea, vomition, etc. Okay, that is nothing but your infection. So food along with the viable pathogens, that is your infection. Okay, examples are E. coli, salmonella. These are examples of foodborne infection. Foodborne intoxication. Here you're taking food, and in that food there is a preformed toxins. Okay, the organisms may or may not be present, but their preformed toxins are present in the food, and that you're consuming it. Okay, so that is intoxication. And foodborne toxico-infection or toxi-infection is nothing but the combination of foodborne infection and intoxication. So infection plus intoxication is nothing but your toxico-infection. Intoxication example are the Staphylococcus species, and toxico-infection will be something like Bacillus cereus. Okay. So here please try to remember, infection means you're taking food and in that food viable pathogens are present. Then you're taking after the intake of the food, it will cause all those types of symptoms: diarrhea, vomition, dysentery, etc. Okay. Intoxication means preformed toxins are already present inside the food. It doesn't contain the organisms. It may not consist the organisms. Okay, so that is nothing but your foodborne intoxication. And intoxication is faster than infection, because in infection what is happening is that you're taking the viable pathogens. That viable pathogens will be producing the toxins, and that will cause all the vomition, diarrhea, food that cramps, etc. But in intoxication, the toxins are already produced by the microorganisms, and the microorganism may not be present. Okay, so that is why intoxication is faster than infection. And in foodborne toxico-infection is nothing but the combination of infection plus intoxication. Example are the Bacillus cereus. So these are some of the diseases which can cause foodborne infection. Now here I am writing foodborne infection. Foodborne infection, it may be meat or it may be milk. Okay, so these are some of the some of the diseases. These are not complete exhaustive diseases. There are many more diseases which can be caused by that can cause infection or intoxication, etc. These are some of the important foodborne infection. Number one is anthrax, caused by Bacillus anthracis. The sources will be your infected animals as well as the contaminated environment. Okay, and through that it can enter to your milk or your meat. The symptoms generally that is seen is that, especially in animal, there will be blood. Where the color of the blood will be something like chocolatey color, and there will be oozing out of the blood from different nares or from different parts of the body. Like sometimes you will see from the nose, sometimes from your eyes also it will be coming. Generally in anthrax, the animal, there will be no rigor mortis will be seen. The animal, it will always be facet, this thing. And in human being, you will see something like Eschar or Wool-Sorter's disease, or it may be in the intestinal form. But here I would like to you guys to remember that the diagnosis is very, very much important. One of the diagnosis method is the McFadden's. This has been asked in the question in your examination, and most probably your unit 3 is about zoonotic diseases. So the diagnostic methods are the McFadden's reaction or the Ascoli test. I think in your biology classes, microbiology classes, this has been uh, explained nicely, right? So for me, from my side, just remember this one anthrax. These are coming under the infection. Anthrax symptoms will be there will be the blood will be something like chocolatey color. No rigor mortis is generally seen in the affected animals or even human beings. McFadden reaction, ascorbic test is one of the methods by which it can be diagnosed. Then comes your brucellosis. Generally, it is said that it is because of the personal hygiene. In India, what is happening is that the goat milk is the number one cause, is the number one reason why brucellosis is happening in India. Generally, in the northern part of the country, especially in the Haryana side, you know, those guys are more into wrestling and all those thing, right? So what they do is that during the summer, they used to drink the goat milk without pasteurizing it. They will put some this thing ice into it, and they will just drink it without pasteurizing. So this is especially Brucella melindensis is the number one reason why there is uh, brucellosis happening in our country because of non-pasteurizing the milk. Okay, so generally, what are the symptoms is seen is that there will be a storm of abortion. Storm of abortion means, especially in the third phase or in the third trimester of pregnancy, especially in cows or in cattle or even in goats. If one male which is being infected, which is being suffering from brucellosis, has been used for service, then what happens is that there will be a storm. A lot of most of the animals will be aborting the fetuses, and this generally occurs once only. And after that, what we have seen generally, it's not true always, but generally what happens is that most most of the animals will not be able to conceive again, right? Now, in human being, it causes undulant fever. Undulant fever means what is happening is that suppose in the morning you are having fever, afternoon you will be feeling okay, evening time you will be something like having a fever type, and then nighttime you'll be okay, then morning again you will be having a fever. So it's undulating. It's going zig this one upper and lower like that. Fever, non-fever, fever, and non-fever. Okay. And in human beings, they will sweat, and this sweat they will give a very peculiar smell. Some says it's an onion smell, some says it's a very peculiar smell. And this particular question has been asked again and again in the examination. So stat test, an MRT test, milk test, stat test, these are the methods by which you are diagnosing this brucellosis. Number three is your Campylobacter. Campylobacter, the main source is because of the fecal contamination. What happens is that when the animals are being, especially say poultry, when they are being, when they are slaughtered, when the feathers are being plucked, the intestine part sometimes they used to cut it, they didn't cut it properly. As a result of which, there may be fecal contamination inside the carcass, and that may be the reason why this type of infection occurs. So generally, what happens is that it will cause a mucous diarrhea, and there may be a reactive arthritis. Reactive arthritis (RA), which is seen in a lot of people, especially who are immunocompromised, and you will see a GBS. This is nothing but your Guillain-Barré syndrome. Guillain-Barré syndrome. What happens is that these are nothing but the nerve problems, especially at the end part of the nerve. They will have a nerve problem. Okay. And diagnosis is because of PCR, and dark field microscopy is also seen. Number four is your listeria. Listeriasis are particularly monocytogens. These are very important. And it is very important because here I've written refrigerator. It's not because of the refrigerator. The thing is that you are buying something like pastries or something like creams, right? These are being generally kept in the refrigerated temperature, and Listeria can survive that particular temperature. That is why I've written the source refrigerated, but it's actually not. The creams uh, are one of the main sources of listeriosis that is happening all over the world, and they can withstand the refrigerator temperature. What is happening is that Listeria monocytogenes or Listeria species, they are having a tumbling motility, and that tumbling motility will be seen at 30 degrees Celsius, till 30 degrees Celsius. Above 30 degrees Celsius, you will see no motility of listeriosis. Okay. Generally, there will be abortion, there will be encephalitis. And PCR and ELISA are one of the best methods for diagnosing the listeriosis. So please remember here, listeria, they can withstand the refrigerating temperature, and the creams are one of the best sources for listeriosis. So whenever you go and visit some malls, you're eating pastries and all, so be careful because sometimes those pastries, cakes, cheese, etc., if they're keeping it for a long period of time or not, just make sure about it. Okay. Salmonellosis. Salmonellosis, we say it is because of water. It may not only be because of water, it may be because of the fecal contamination. Campylobacter and Salmonellosis. These are the two microorganisms that is causing havoc in the third world country, like the Africans country. Because what is happening is that they don't have proper water to drink, and number two is that they are also having a lot of shortage of foods, and the proper cleaning materials also is not possible. So that is the reason why a lot of people are dying because of the Campylobacter as well as the Salmonellosis and E. coli. Okay. Uh, Symptoms are that there will be typhoid because salmonellosis cause, you might have heard because of this one, Salmonella typhi. But here in VPH, we are mainly concerned about the enteritidis and the typhimurium. So those are non, what to say, NTS, that is non-typhoidal salmonella. Okay. Otherwise, in very what to say, in very acute cases or in very rare cases, they may be cause abortion as well as diarrhea. PCR is one of the best method. Shigellosis, again, it is because of the contaminated water or the utensils. And if you are using such kind of contaminated water or utensils for keeping milk or meat, from there onwards, they can get infected. Again, here, you will be having acute intestinal disease, and sometimes you will see a bloody diarrhea. But please remember that all the bloody diarrhea does not mean that it is because of shigellosis. It may be because of salmonellosis. It may be because of Campylobacter also. Okay, and PCR is one of the best methods by which you can diagnose the shigellosis. Then comes your tuberculosis. I mean. Tuberculosis, again, this is because of the infected animal. Many a times, such animals, they may not be what is it, diagnosed. So sometimes because of the misdiagnosis, people what they do is that they will milk the cow, or they will milk the, or they will slaughter the animal because of its too weak nature. Uh, so because of the milk or because of the meat, they may be they that become the main source of infection. Then number the symptoms is that you will generally see about the pulmonary diseases. You know, the lungs are normally very much infected by the tubercles of tuberculosis and Mycobacterium bovis. If you see the history of tuberculosis, it is said that the tuberculosis, this mycobacterium, it has spread from animal to man. Okay, so it has been genotypically mapped, and it has been completely established that the mycobacterium tuberculosis, basically what happened is that it has been uh, transferred, or it has been transmitted from animal to man, and the present mycobacterium tuberculosis is the mutation of the animal tuberculosis. Okay, the diagnosis is the tuberculin test or the Storman test, and when you come back, we'll be explaining this one nicely in the practical class. Then comes your Vibrio parahemolyticus. Vibrio parahemolyticus is because of the contaminated water supply. Then you will be getting a lot of diarrhea and vomiting. So in infection, you can write diarrhea, vomiting. It's okay, right? Most of the infection, foodborne infection, you will find all this type of thing. Then the diagnosis is the Kanagawa phenomenon. Of course, PCR also can be used, but Kanagawa phenomenon is very much attached to Vibrio parahemolyticus. In examination also, I've seen some questions. Kanagawa phenomena uh, related to which organisms. So this is the one. And comes your Yersiniosis. Among all the Yersinia, only Yersinia pestis is the one which is non-motile. The rest of the Yersinia, that is Yersinia species, those are all motile. And the main source of Yersinia is through fecal contamination. And in general, what happens is that symptoms in human being, you will see that there will be diarrhea, vomiting, but sometimes this character, pseudoappendicitis, is generally seen, and particularly Yersinia species, except for pestis. Okay, so PCR and ELISA are the one which can detect this Yersiniosis. Then Q fever. Okay, and Q fever under once upon a time when we studied, it was under this thing, Rickettsia. Okay, Rickettsia species, but now it is coming under gram-negative bacteria. Okay, and the sources of the fevers are the infected animals, and it is very important from the milk point of view is because the pasteurization, the organisms which says the pasteurization temperature is basically made because of the Q fever. Earlier they used to withstand the 72 degrees Celsius. Now that is why the pasteurization temperature has been increased. Okay, so the Q fever is the organisms which can help in determining whether pasteurization has been completed properly or not. And the symptoms are the febrile in illness such as pneumonia, and PCR is one of the best method by which we can detect. Then come your viral diseases such as polio, hepatitis A, tick-borne encephalitis, FMD. So polio basically it is through water, that is fecal contamination. Hepatitis is because of the milk handler and infected animals, that is contaminated environment. Same is the case of FMD. Here we are talking about foot-mouth diseases. We are not talking about foot and mouth diseases. Okay, we are talking about the Coxsackie workers virus that is causing the FMD, that is foot-mouth diseases. Okay, generally this one is not very much important. You can just write about polio. You can cause something like a headache. Hepatitis, if it occurs, you can very well know that because of it will attack mainly the liver. Tick-borne encephalitis is important because it causes something like meningoencephalitis. That's the encephalitis zone. Then FMD, there will be vesicles in hand and mouth, and these are contagious, especially for small children. Those guys who are having babies in their houses, it is very contagious for them. And if you see that all of them can be diagnosed through PCR. Okay, so this is mainly about the infection. Then the intoxication. Intoxication such as the diseases can be caused by the botulism, that is Clostridium botulinum, and the sources are mainly the soil as well as the water. Okay, and botulism is very very important because death is very certain. I mean, if you don't handle the situation very well, then definitely that can occur very swiftly. Symptoms are mainly about vomiting as well as the headache. And cholera, especially the Vibrio choleras, they are very important because in most of the country and those places where the hygienic condition was not maintained, where the water was in contact with the feces, There, the people were dying like anything. And in the olden days, cholera was one of the reasons why a lot of people died. And here the symptom is something like rice water diarrhea. The diarrhea is something like rice water diarrhea. It is very much, uh, what to say, the symptom is very authentic, or what to say, this cholera. If you see about rice water diarrhea, just think about cholera. Okay. And PCR is one of the method by which you can diagnose it. Then here we are talking about the E. coli. We are not talking about all of the E. coli. There are certain E. coli which can cause foodborne intoxication. Okay, and there can be diarrhea with or without vomiting. And water and feces are the main reasons. And likewise, I've said staphylococcal poisoning is because of the human handlers. Basically, those guys who are having a lot of boils in their faces, furuncles in their faces, those type of persons generally are not allowed to handle meat or any food materials, because through them only the staphylococcal intoxication can happen. So there can be nausea, vomiting, abdominal cramps, and PCR is one of the best methods by which it can be diagnosed. Then, for your toxico infections, some of the examples are the Bacillus cereus. Again, Bacillus, it can be through infected animal or through the contaminated utensils. Here, diarrheal type as well as the vomiting type happens. Now, here what is happening is that one of the main sources of Bacillus cereus, especially if you talk about the vomiting type, which causes intoxication. So, what happens is that you're eating rice and there are some leftover rice, okay, and you have not covered it properly, or uh, you have not warmed it properly. Now what happened is that the leftover rice, you don't feel like throwing it, so you have kept it for, say, today morning you have taken, and afternoon, evening also you have taken, but still some leftover rice are there. So what happens is that the next morning you don't feel like cooking, you are using the same rice, the leftover rice. But when you warm it, you are not warming it properly. Now, if there is a bacillus infection, if there is a bacillus organism that has entered to the rice, then because of the warming, you are not warming it at the high temperature, you are warming it in lukewarm temperature, then that temperature will be enough for this bacillus cereus to grow or cultivate. Okay, so or not cultivate, it grow. So that is the reason why Bacillus cereus is at this point with the vomiting type. In the diarrheal type, what is happening is that, and this vomiting type is mainly related to your intoxication. In diarrheal type, it is related to the infection type. Bacillus cereus in diarrheal type also will give you something like rice water diarrhea. So that is the reason why that you have to see what is the source. What is the source of the food? If they say rice or something like starchy material, then it will be because of the bacillus cells. Then comes your Clostridium perfringens. In Clostridium perfringens, there are different type of uh, this one. You know the different type of Clostridium perfringens, so like type A, type B, type C, type D, and type E. Clostridium perfringens type A, that is the one that is mainly related to foodborne infection or foodborne poisoning. Type B causes lamb diarrhea or lamb dysentery. Type C causes struck. Type D causes pulpy kidney disease. And type E causes what? Anybody?
Pulpy kidney disease.
Type E. No, yaar. Type D is with the pulpy kidney disease. Type B is with the lamb dysentery. And type C is struck. Type E is what? Come on, give me an answer.
Meningitis.
Yes, correct. Type E, enteritis, hemorrhagic enteritis. That is how you have to remember. In the examinations, the questions might come like which of the Clostridium perfringens causes food poisoning or foodborne diseases. Then it has to be type A. Type D causes what? It may come like that. Strep is caused by which type of Clostridium perfringens. Okay, so that is how you have to remember. So some of the examples are like I might by foodborne infection and give some examples of foodborne infection. Or I might ask you like bacillary rice water disease. I might give you some particular example like the Shyam was making a food. He was making a rice. Then after the leftover rice, he warmed it. He got the social conditions. So diagnose what is the reason that he got this type of food poisoning and what may be the organisms that may be related to the food poisoning, right? So this type of the questions will be coming in the examination. So you have to remember in that manner. So this one for this today, and another this thing is toxic residues. It's important. So let us finish this particular chapter fast. When we talk about the toxic residues, two things will always come in your mind. One is your acceptable daily intake or ADI. That is what you mean by acceptable daily intake. So the amount of certain specific substances which you may take such certain substances in the food or in the drinking water, and it can be ingested orally on daily basis for a lifetime, which may not cause any appreciable health risk. Okay, so when we talk about the specific substances, we are talking about the food additives, and earlier it was the food additives. Sometimes you may have seen that the lal mirch or the red chili, they are quite red. It is because of the coloring agent, right? So earlier it used to be like that, but later on what happened is that there were residues of the veterinary drug as well as the pesticide. So this were also added. So this is nothing but the specific substances which may be ingested in the food orally or daily basis for a life period of time without any health risk or appreciable health risk. That is nothing but your acceptable daily intake. Number two is your maximum residual limit. So when we talk about the MRL or the maximum residual limit, just think about the pesticide. Sometimes what happens is that pesticides are present in the food. Certain amount of pesticides are present in the food. Okay, because there are certain pesticides which are being used for the proper growth of for the during the cultivation process. So the maximum amount of pesticide residues that remains in the food products when pesticides are used, that too according to the label direction, and that will not cause any concern to the human health. That is nothing but your maximum residue limit. So some of the residues that we are talking about that may become toxic are the drugs such as the antibiotics, which may be coccidioxide or which may be antibiotics. And we are talking about the insecticides like the hydrocarbons or the organophosphates, then metals such as lead, arsenic, mercury, then the hormones that are also being used. Okay, so we'll be discussing one by one. And some of the residues such as the growth promoters and preservatives and other substances, etc. So generally, if you see these toxic materials or toxic residues, the roots of entry is one of the skin. What happens is that you're using, they have spray the pesticides on the soil, and you're using your hand to take care of the weeds, or you're using the hands to take care of the soil. Then through that soil, through your skin, they can enter. Number two is your mouth. Okay, mouth means you're taking. We'll explain about it. Then inhalation during the spraying also. Sometimes you're inhaling, and through the eyes also they can enter this toxic residues. So what is happening is that this is the method by which the toxic residues are entering, and this is in general we are talking about the veterinary sectors or and okay. So what happened is that uh, livestock feed and water. So sometimes you are using in livestock feed and water, we are using the contaminated feed or the contaminated water. That means sometimes we are spreading the uh, pesticides into the soil, and when the rain comes, they will remove the soil and they will take it to the waters. And again, we are using it will go to particular place where there are a lot of waters. So that water we are again using it. So that is how the water is being contaminated. Number two is your contaminated feed. What happens is that you're using pesticides for the proper growth of a particular plants or something, then you're using that particular plant, say particular crop. We are using wheat, and that wheat is being, or say maize. Maize are generally being used in the feed of the animals. It may be of pigs, or it may be of cattle, or it may be of poultry. But while growing them, you are using a lot of pesticide. Now, what happens is that that pesticide may be sucked up for the normal growth of the uh, proper growth of the maize, and that maize become contaminated. And this is how the contaminated feeds are entering into the. And when you're using such type of maize to make feed, that is how it becomes contaminated. Sometimes what happens is that in the post-harvest contamination that can also occur. So now this contaminated water and this contaminated feeds are being taken by the animals. Okay. And once what happens is that this particular animal, say cow, we are using it for meat purpose and we are using for the milk purpose. And this contaminated milk and meat, because they are already being eating contaminated water as well as contaminated meat, so definitely the meat and milk will be contaminated. And that animal products the consumers are drinking or eating, right? Now, sometimes what happens is that this particular animal is sick, okay, or it's not feeding well. Then we are giving an injectable drugs, or we are giving them certain drugs which may be also like through oral or through injectable. And what happens is that the drugs, they are having a certain withdrawal period. Withdrawal period means that the drug, when certain drug enter into your body, it has to be completely it takes a certain period of time to completely remove from the body, so that is nothing, that is known as a withdrawal period, and every drug has a certain withdrawal period. But what happens is that sometimes the farmer used to uh, after injecting the drug, this farmer may either milk the cow, or he may or use it, slaughter the animal for the meat purpose. And that is the reason how this toxic residues from the veterinary drug remains in the animal, and that byproducts we are, yeah, consuming it. So the potential health hazards, when we talk about the toxic residues, these two are the most important one which is causing the potential health hazard. One is the neurotoxicity, that is mainly affecting your nerve, and number two is your carcinogenicity, that is basically cancer. And if you see in today's world, cancers, why we are blaming the meat and meat product is because of these toxic residues in general, though it has not been scientifically proved, but there are a lot of scientists who are telling that these two are increasing because of the contaminated feeds as well as the toxic residues which are present inside the animal byproducts that we are eating it. Then, of course, there are skin diseases, and there are reduced fertility, there are immunosuppressions, and congenital defects are also seen. So let us talk about the antibiotics. So what happens is that in antibiotics, sometimes what happens is that we are using it for the veterinary medicines, and even the antibiotics are used in the animal feed as an additives so that they can grow properly. But even the antibiotics, certain antibiotics we are also using in the agriculture for the plant protection, and of course the hospitals we are using it for the medicines as well as the generally this we are using it for the treatment with prophylaxis method. But what is happening is that if the proper disposals of the hospital byproduct or the agriculture byproducts does not happen, they can definitely enter into the uh, this one into the animals, and that is the reason why we are facing this one antibiotic residues. This one we are facing a lot. And number two is that you will see in today's world, you're talking a lot of time they will be talking about the uh, superbugs. So superbugs are nothing but those type of organisms, those type of microorganisms which are drug resistance. Okay, you might have heard about the MDR, multiple or this one, multi-drug resistance tuberculosis, or you may have heard about MRSA, methicillin resistant Staphylococcus aureus. So these are nothing but the superbugs. And what happens is that because of the scrupulous use, unwanted use or unwanted use of the antibiotics, these organisms are getting resistance to such type of antibiotics. And here also, it is because of the antibiotics that we are having a lot of problems. So the drugs normally that can be detected in the meat are the penicillin, the tetracycline, sulfonamides, neomycin, gentamicin, streptomycin, etc. And this is what I was meaning about the withdrawal period. So amoxicillin, it takes generally about 12 days to completely, if you inject amoxicillin in the animals, it takes about 12 days to be completely free of that particular drug or this particular drug, and so on. So these are the drugs where certain withdrawal periods are there. So what happens is that the farmer sometimes used to and once you are injecting such type of drugs, then if the animal is for the milking purpose or the meat purpose, then they should not be milked or milked unless their withdrawal period has been over. But this is not possible in our country because our farmers are so poor that they have to do it. Okay. So what happens is that we might be drinking milk which is maybe containing the amoxicillin or say the tetracycline. And in long term, what happens is that it may accumulate as a result of which the microorganisms which we may have may get resistance to tetracycline or amoxicillin. So if you go to the market, check out nowadays. So they are telling that the withdrawal period is for 3 days, 2 days, etc. So every drugs for every company they are having different withdrawal period. And the effect of the residues is this one. You have anaphylactic reaction, allergy, and this one is the most important one, drug resistance organisms. And this is the reason why we are getting more and more superbugs in our country. Then the pesticides. So basically, pesticides means that these are any substances or mixture of any substances which are intended for destroying, preventing, or repelling any pest. And when we talk about pest, it may be about the rodents or it may be about the grasshoppers, etc. Which generally, when we talk about the pesticides, it's about the agricultural product. Okay. So these are the different types of the pesticides. We may have the insecticides which may really work against the insects, such as the organophosphates, carbonates, organochlorine. Then we may have the fungicides which may be acting against the molds. Then we have the rodenticides, fumigants, herbicides, etc. So the reasons of the pesticide residues is that we are using it very frequently so that our crops, the farmer crops, may be saved from different pesticides and they may not be incurring heavy losses. Then number two is that they do not uh, what to say, they do not use the pesticide as it is. For example, what is happening was that one of our senior was telling us a story. Story means what happened that in certain part of the country he went. So he saw a fish, this one, a fish seller, and the fish seller was using a certain amount of this pesticide. And what happened was that he took the pesticide in his hand and he completely smeared the fish with the pesticide. So this senior of us asked like what you were doing. He said that I'm smearing this pesticide so that the flies may not sit upon the fish. But now you can imagine that he is not using it as it is supposed to be used. For example, most of the pesticide, there may be written that 1 gram or 1 teaspoon in 1 liter of water or 500 liter, half liter of water, right? So we are not using it as it is supposed to be used. That is what this second point means, lack of control in application. Then number three is that they are having poor equipment and they don't have the analytical capability. For example, most of the pesticide, you will see a very particular, a very peculiar number, like 200, 200 some, or say 150 gram or 170 milligram to be used in 1 liter of water or 2 liter of water. Okay, how will you measure for a farmer how he or she is going to measure 150 milligram or 150 gram, okay, in the field condition? So that is why we are talking about the poor equipment. And the source or origin of the pesticides through milk, these are mainly attributed to two factors. One of them is that once the contaminated feed or the contaminated soils or the contaminated water is being drinking, then their residues can be secreted in the milk. Okay, and direct contaminations of milk after milking. This is also seen because sometimes what happens is that the material or the utensils they may be in direct contact with such type of. It may be because of the water, or it may be because of the soil. That may be in the, and that is why it can go through the milk. So, DDT, Lincoln, these are the things, these are the insecticides, and these are the tolerance limit. This is in parts per million. I'll be giving you this particular slides, so don't worry about it. So, this is the maximum tolerance limit, and after this, if there is more than this, then that food is supposed to be thrown, but generally it does not occur. And symptoms, again, it depends on which part of the body it is affecting. For example, if it is these insecticides is in the skin, then you will have rash, cardiovascular. If you have impact, then it will affect your cardiovascular system, gastrointestinal. Most of the time, we have seen this particular cases where there is vomiting, nausea, etc. Nervous system also is being affected as well as the respiratory system. And we are talking about the heavy metals. And when we talk about the heavy metals, it's not because the metals are very heavy that you cannot lift it. That is why they are called heavy metals. It's not that. Because of its high relative density. That is the reason why it is called heavy metal. So they are having high metal, high density, but they have low toxicity. But at the same time, they are very much effective. These are the examples: arsenic, lead, mercury. Trace elements, they are also, heavy metal. They are generally very essential for the body metabolism. But at a certain level, more than above the certain level, if they are present, then they are toxic. Okay, and this heavy metal they can enter the body through food, through water, through air. So heavy metals, for example, arsenic, there will be irritation to the lungs, stomach, intestine, etc. Lead, they will affect your kidney, solvent. So that is why those persons who are affected by lead, they should be drinking a lot of water so that kidney can be saved. Mercury, there will be kidney damage, nervous system, and damage to the brain. Cadmium, again, the kidneys will be damaged and your CNS will be mainly affected. And these are some of the amounts of the most maximum permissible limit that should be there in the body or in the food. And come about your hormones. The hormones, these are very much important. Sometimes they are being used in milk and meat, for example, the oxytocins we are using so that the milk can be, there can be increased production of milk, and in meat they are used as a growth hormone. They are using for the growth promoting hormones. Then the progesterone for that pregnancy. Okay, but what happens is that when you are eating food which is completely of hormones, then it is affecting your this one sexual maturity and puberty in female and also in males. Now, many times you will see that the guys, a lot of youngsters, their hair, it's something like becoming white. they're growing faster. It may be because of the hormones that is present inside the food. Then there can be atrophy of glands, neoplasm, and many times there may be also psychological changes. Sometimes because what is happening is that because of the early maturity and the early sexuality happens, then that psychological changes which should be there normally at normal growth does not happen. And that is why these psychological changes can happen. Okay, so this much only. Thank you very much. I'll be sending this thing to your CR, and most probably your CR will be giving it to you. Okay. Uh, is there any other question? And I'm sorry, it may be very boring. And tomorrow also I'll be taking your class. Okay, instead of math lab. Okay then, guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.